out there, survivors, how are you all doing? And welcome back to another episode of The Hidden Gems. This is a component here on the YouTube channel where we talk about undiscovered gems, games that maybe people love that, you know, kind of got waylaid or lost between the cracks. So what you might be wondering is like the name of this episode, which is Hidden Gems, Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. That doesn't seem like a hidden gem. But when we're talking about a franchise that has as many iconic and huge titles as the Zelda series, there's got to be a couple of hidden gems in there too. The ones that don't get talked about as much, or, you know, they're not your Ocarina of Times or your Link to the Past. So today, I'm delighted to have Moibarajas, another amazing streamer and content creator, on the show with me as we kind of look at Skyward Sword. And we're going to kind of rationalize why we believe this is a hidden gem and why you should check it out when the new release drops. Moi, welcome to the show.
No, thank you for having me. We're going to dive really deep into this because when we consider Zelda, because Zelda's pretty much everybody knows what the series is, but Skyward Sword, exactly, that's the tattoo. When we consider Skyward Sword, the reason why I consider it a hidden gem is because sales wise, it is the 3D Zelda that has sold the least to this date.
Yeah. And that's a perfectly viable reason, especially I remember at the time that it came out, I think Twilight Princess was meant to be a Wii launch title, but then they still released the GameCube version as well. So I think a lot of people I think saw Twilight Princess as the Wii Zelda game, even because Skyward Sword released so late into the Wii's life cycle as well. It was literally like one of the last big releases for the console. So I think that didn't help it either, releasing so close, so far down the line. I think people were kind of just like waiting for the next Nintendo console at that point.
Yeah, so here's the issue with Twilight Princess. I believe the Wii version came out, and then a week later they released the GameCube version. So I don't know why Nintendo did that. Maybe it's to boost up the hardware sales for the Wii. But they definitely consider Twilight Princess a Wii Zelda game instead of Skyward Sword. It was definitely the black sheep on the Wii.
Definitely. And like, it's funny because at the time, I can throw a little bit of my own context in here, which is that at the time that Skyward Sword released, all of my friends, I was like so hyped for Skyward Sword, and I was like, I'm gonna go buy it day one, Wii Motion Plus, yeah, let's do it. And like all of my friends, I was a game dev at the time, and all the people in the studio, all of my friends were hyped for a very different game because they were releasing around the same time. They were hyped for Skyrim. So
Skyrim is a game I still need to play. But the only reason why the only reason holding me off from Skyrim is it's so buggy.
Yeah,
like if you try to play it now, if you try to play it now, it's so bad bug wise. But at the time it released, it was amazing.
And yeah, but what it was as well was just like it was on every platform. Well, it was on like PlayStation, Xbox. It was like everywhere. It was PC. I just remember that like trying to convince my friends to check out Skyward Sword. They were like, "I've got 400 hours booked of Skyrim. Like I gotta do that first, man." So I think there was a lot of reasons why this slid under the radar a little bit as a, you know, because it's a mainline Zelda title. You know, it's not a spin-off.
Also, I feel like the Wii itself had something to do with that. The Wii, towards the end of its life cycle, it literally became a shovelware machine.
Oh, absolutely.
It was nothing but bad game after bad game being released on that system. So once you actually got a good game on there, it's like, well, who's interested in the Wii anymore?
Exactly. I definitely think there was like a bunch of factors here. Like, as you say, the life cycle of the Wii and the fact, and everybody at this point was probably already kind of going like, where's the next console? Where's the Wii U? Which nobody even knew what it was at that time, but people were like waiting for the next thing, and they weren't necessarily like, like everybody had probably already moved off to the other consoles as well at that point, like the Xbox or PlayStation, you know. But yeah, so you picked Skyward Sword though, which tells me that you have a connection to this game. So I'd love to kind of ask you a little bit about what is your connection to Skyward Sword?
So my actual genuine connection with Skyward Sword is, it was a game that I had to work to actually play it myself. I remember asking my dad, I was like, hey, I don't have a Wii. It was 2012, I believe. The game had already released. I was like, hey, I want a Wii. I want this game. What do I need to do to get it? Your next report card, show me your grades. And it took a whole 3 or 4 months. Show me your grades, and if they're good, I'll go buy you that system. So I was busting my butt in school. To be honest, I was never a good person in school, but to play Skyward Sword, I had to. So it got to the point where I was just, busting my butt to making sure that I was getting good grades. And then that report card came. And I remember that exact same day, I showed him the report card and we went to GameStop.
Oh, that's sweet. That's such a sweet story. I can empathize. It's a very different time, right? I'm very old, okay? And when I was like 13, which this is going back to the 90s, when I was like 13 or 14, I wanted a PlayStation 1 more than anything. And like my parents had always gotten me like the SNES and the Genesis, but when it came to the PlayStation, it was like $400 and they were like, not a hope. We're not buying you a PS1, no. And so I went out and I got a part-time job back when child labor was still allowed. I went out and worked in a bar at 14 collecting glasses. That's where I developed my drinking habit. And then, but again, that feeling of accomplishment when I got the PS1 and I got Resident Evil, which was what I wanted it for, was just like, oh snap. So like, I love that story you're talking about. I know that feeling of when you work really hard for something and how like, you'll always have a connection to that game. Like it's just baked into you.
Yeah, that game actually has like a genuine connection to me. And here we are talking about it now.
And how did you feel, I guess, obviously one point of contention that people always bring up when talking about this Zelda game is the motion controls. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on the motion controls themselves.
Personally, I think the motion controls for me, they weren't as much of a hassle. There's people that had, desyncs. The Wii Remote Plus would disconnect consistently and they would have to recalibrate their Wii Remote. For me, I really didn't have those issues. But that being said, having to wave your arms around all the time to play this game can definitely get annoying. But I think the story that game told pushed you through it. And it's definitely, at least for me, the best Zelda story to date.
I definitely am right there with you, which is why when you brought this game up, is why I was very keen to talk about it as well, is because like, I love the Zelda franchise and I do think there's some great stories in there. I mean, but a lot of Zelda games are more about the journey than the story. It's more just, the story is very straightforward. It's you're the hero of time and you have to save Hyrule from Ganon. But like this was before everything. Like this is what I love about the story in that game is it's like, it sets up the whole universe. Like this is your Iron Man 1. Do you know what I mean?
It's literally such a good experience. So you start off in Skyloft, and you have no idea why. You just know it's the beginning of Zelda. It's like, okay, where do we get to eventually, inevitably, to the end game?
I remember one thing I'm going to jump on here is the birds. That was, I remember, being a big thing. Like when you're in Skyloft, it's all about riding these loft wings. And like, I will say that with the motion controls, I was fine with most of the motion controls of this game. The only thing that irritated me was flying the loft wings with the motion controls.
Yeah, flying the birds with that damn remote. It was definitely a hassle. You know exactly what I mean when you had to hold the Wii remote like this to make them dip down. Like that puts a strain on your arm doing exactly this. Yeah, that
I remember
sucks.
that so vividly.
So one thing I do like about the Switch version that's coming out is that they are actually adding button controls. Yes,
which, as I say, another reason that this was I wanted to jump on this is because we'll get to that in a little bit for sure, but like but I do remember to kind of jump a little bit forward with this. You go down to the land below Skyloft, Hyrule, what will become Hyrule, I guess. And you encounter, like, I love that in the Zelda games you always have that partner character. Like in Ocarina of Time it was Navi.
Hey, listen.
In Majora's Mask it was Tattle. In Twilight Princess it was Midna. And in this you have Fi.
Yeah.
Fi.
Oh, you say Fi. You say Fi.
Fi, Fi, Fo, Fum.
Yeah, that will always be a Zelda argument. Phi or Phi?
I'm terrible with pronunciations in general. You should have heard the way I was pronouncing Sephiroth for the last 25 years until Square were like, no, this is how it's actually pronounced.
I'm curious. What was that?
So I have always, for as long as I've played Final Fantasy VII, I had always called. See, now it's hard to even remember, like, because I've started to adapt the proper way, but Sephiroth.
Like Sephiroth?
Sephiroth. Because I was like, that's the way it says it in the song. That's the way it says it in One Winged Angel. Sephiroth. So that was how I read it. And then they were like Sephiroth. And I was like, oh, that's weird. It's like, but now I've like, oh no, that's the normal way, Paddy. That's how it's supposed to be pronounced.
Yeah.
So we'll go with Phi. Because I think you are right.
Yeah. So Phi, I can see why people consider Phi one of the most annoying companions ever. Because Phi will not shut up about anything. Master, it's about 87% that this creature is Zelda. It's like, no, I'm looking at it. It's a fish.
That's so accurate.
Yeah, and not only that, Master, your batteries are about to die. It's like, wow, I don't know that. But again, just like every companion, you learn to love them.
I think so. Because like, look at Navi. Navi was considered to be one of the most annoying characters ever. Hey, listen.
Yeah.
But like, again, and then you go to Majora's Mask, you're like, I miss Navi.
Yeah, Tattle is definitely not as memorable as Navi, for sure.
Definitely not. And I mean, everybody fell in love with Midna. I think Midna is probably the most well-loved of the companion characters, probably.
Yes. Seeing Sweetheart Ally finish Twilight Princess for the first time and her reaction to that reveal at the end was one of the best things ever.
It was glorious.
I consider Twilight Princess probably in my top 3 Zelda games.
We will actually, at the end of this interview, we'll have to talk like your top Zeldas. I think that's a good way to close this out towards the end. But
for sure.
So we kind of talked a little bit about like this game, and as we say, like one thing that I want to jump on a little bit and talk a little bit more about is what you said, which is that this is one of the best stories of the Zelda series. And the thing is, this is where we definitely have a hard, like, completely in agreement. Like, I think that this is a Zelda game that tries to be more of a conventional story-based game. Like, yeah. And I think some people hated it for that.
I feel like the reason why the story's so good, it has to do with the game's structure. The game is very linear. Yeah. Like, let's be honest. The same areas that you see, you're probably going to be back there about twice. Yeah. Or 3 times, if I remember. So the fact that the game is very linear, it's able to tell you the story it wants. But I guess you can see it's kind of repetitive in a way. Yeah. Like the boss with, what was his name? I forgot the big old guy that in the Sacred Grounds. Oh yeah.
I'll put a clip of him in here. We'll see him. We'll see this big buckle.
Yeah. Well, that big guy. You fight him, I believe, 3 times, and I think 3 times is a little excessive for me. Yeah. Because what you're pretty much doing is you're sealing him 3 times in a row, and it's just like, okay. After the second time, it's like I understand what you're trying to make me do. Yeah. So the fact that it's very linear and it helps to convey the story it wants to tell.
One thing that a lot of people don't realize about this game, and I love to bring this up because I love when I get into a debate about this series and people shit on this game. What I love to bring up is the fact that a lot of the best elements that people praise to the high heavens about Breath of the Wild originated here in this game. The paraglider, the stamina bar, they all started in Skyward Sword.
Yep. Yep, and I'm pretty sure they've let that be known in the Nintendo Direct itself when they showed it off. It's like, hey, that stamina gauge, it started here. The sailcloth, it started here. So if any of that interests you itself, please check out Skyward Sword. And for those who haven't played Skyward Sword and have played Breath of the Wild, one thing Breath of the Wild did lack, and I say that genuinely, it's story. It's story. You had to go search for it. Mm-hmm. The story wasn't the best, but it could have been more in my opinion. Now, if you want a Zelda game that tells nothing but story, Skyward Sword is that game for you.
Definitely. And what I will say there as well is that, like, I love Breath of the Wild. I put 200 hours into it. I adore it. But, like, I adore it on a gameplay level. Like, the gameplay is really solid. But one thing I will also say about that is that what it also lacks is dungeons. Like, it doesn't have... It has those monsters that it's basically Shadow of the Classes. Like, you go to a big monster and have to find the weak point and defeat it that way or whatever. But, like, it doesn't have what Zelda's known for, which is big dungeons. Whereas I remember some of the ones in Skyward Sword, and they were hard, man. Like, they were hard dungeons. The sand one, like... I think
the dungeon that I remember the most has to do with the time switches.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's nothing but I think we're talking about the same one, right?
Yeah, probably. Sand. I think so, yeah.
Yeah, you hit the switches and then it comes back to, like... So the sand is present time, but then you hit the switch and it takes you back to that certain time period.
Yes.
And you got to see exactly how everything was.
Yeah.
Like, that has to be probably my favorite dungeon. Hands down.
It's so good.
Even though it's hard for you.
I still loved it because, again, I want to be like, some of my favorite dungeons in Zelda games are the ones that other people hate because they're hard, because I'm like, they're supposed to be. They're the challenge. Like, they're the meat of the challenge, you know? But yeah, like, I completely agree with you. I think that Skyward Sword, I've always loved this series. From Link to the Past on, I've always been a fan. But like you, I had always seen it as, when I first played, okay, this is a great way of explaining what I'm trying to say. When I first played Final Fantasy VII in 1997, I went, this is cool because it actually tells, like, a real story. Like, it actually has, like, an arc and stuff. I'm like, I love Zelda. It's great. It's so much fun to play. It's awesome. But it's not a story game. Like, it's not a big in-depth, there's not complex characters and complex motivations and stuff. Whereas you get to Skyward Sword, or even Twilight Princess, I think, in some respects. But yeah, I think Skyward Sword is where it really becomes, like, because they set out with the goal of, we're going to start the whole series from here. This is where the origins of everything come in, you know?
Yeah, they needed to establish the hero, the goddess, and the main baddie.
Yes.
So throughout the whole game, you're seeing their journeys, their stories, and eventually why Gani keeps popping up.
And also, I mean, not to give anything away, but I mean, this is kind of a given for most Zelda games as well. But the great thing about Skyward Sword is, because it's the very first in the timeline, we get to see, like, the creation of the Master Sword as well, which is like, as a Zelda fan, you're gonna lose your shit. Like,
yes. I remember playing that. It was around like 2 or 3 in the morning, and just you raising that sword for the very first time after creating it yourself. Oh, what a feeling. What a feeling.
It made you feel like Link, like you were like, I am Link. I've created this with my parents.
They legit make you raise it with the freaking Wii remote. It's so good.
The question that I normally ask people around here is normally, right? I normally ask, what do you think this game does better than any, like, more unique or better than any other game of its type? I think with Zelda, we can kind of localize that a bit more because this is a series, it's a franchise. So, like, what do you think this, I think we've maybe touched on it, but yeah, what do you think this does more unique than any other Zelda game?
Well, primarily the story, for sure. Again, the story is what gravitates me the most to this game. But the dungeons themselves, they're really well designed. The dungeons are incredible. And not only that, the items they give you to go across these dungeons and eventually beat them, probably the best in the series, in my opinion.
They're top tier. The items in this game are top tier. And again, I remember people complaining about some of them, like the beetle and stuff, like that you say in the Scarab thing. Because again, people complained about the motion controls, but like, I love that.
It's such a silly item, but it's so good.
Yeah, exactly. The funny thing, I completely agree. I think what this does, for me, the reason that this is a standout game in the Zelda series is because you don't often get a Zelda game that is almost like, you know, the way a lot of, you've just played through the Metal Gear franchise, so this is a great way of explaining this. A lot of games feel like movies, like, or they at least try to emulate the feeling of movies. Like, Zelda's never done that. Like, Zelda's never tried to be a movie-like game experience. but like I think Skyward Sword really put a lot of effort into the cutscenes, into the characters, into everything to try and give it more of that like almost movie-esque feeling, like a high fantasy movie.
Yeah, like even certain characters that you were just like, oh, this guy is just, here to be a jerk or whatever. Groose is a character that you eventually even adore towards the end. Yeah. So they put a lot of character development within this game itself. It's a treasure.
I love this. I mean, yeah, I think we can kind of start talking now, because normally I'd ask, what can you play it on? I mean, at the moment, this is only available still on the Nintendo Wii. I mean, you could play it on the Wii U, but who has a Wii U? I'm joking. Yeah, same.
I do.
I do too. But no, I guess the great thing is, as we said early on, this is getting a re-release on the Nintendo Switch. Yeah. So take us away, Mo. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I believe it's coming out July 16th or 21st. Don't quote me on that. But for those who legit haven't played Skyward Sword, it is a journey that you will not forget. And again, shout out to Sweetheart Allie. I'm excited to see what she's going to think of this game itself. It's going to be one heck of a journey. But just let the story just captivate you. If you play it with the motion controls, give it a try. If not, just switch to the button controls. Yeah. You'll definitely enjoy it for sure.
I mean, hopefully with the fact that it's going to use the Joy-Cons, like maybe there'll be less issues, there'll be less desyncing, there'll be less of all. I'd say if I was playing it on my TV in docked mode, I'll probably play it motion control. And then if I'm playing it handheld, I'll play it norm. We'll see, I guess.
Yeah. I think for nostalgia's sake, I will still play with motion controls.
Yeah.
Something about holding a Wii remote just feels way too clunky, but holding little Joy-Cons just seems fine with me. Yeah. So I'll probably go with the motion controls either way.
You're not tethered together with a little cable.
Yes.
With the nunchucks.
That's one thing I hated. You got the strap, right? So the freaking Wii remote doesn't fall out of your hand. And then you got this big old cable connecting both of them. So you're literally controlling where the wire's at all times.
Yeah, it was not. I mean, obviously it worked for the Wii. Look, it was one of the best-selling consoles of all time and stuff. But like, it was not necessarily the most intuitive. Like looking at the Joy-Con, it feels like that was maybe what they always wanted.
Yeah. The Switch itself it's that's a whole different conversation.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's. I just want it to be a Zelda system, though. I just want 35-year anniversary. I just want them to release every Zelda game on it.
Don't get me started about Zelda 35th anniversary. Breath of the Wild 2, where are you?
I know, right? I was having this conversation with somebody on stream the other day. I was like, come on, like I need more.
Have you heard what Aonuma, the producer of the Zelda series, has said about Breath of the Wild 2? He said that this might be darker. Or no, this is darker than Majora's Mask.
Oh, which like, look, this is a great way for me to segue off though and ask you, what are your favorite Zelda games?
My favorite of all time has to be Ocarina of Time.
Totally reasonable. I don't think anybody could.
It's a magical experience. But now if we're talking about second and third, I think it's a toss-up between my second, easily Skyward Sword. The story is
nice.
It elevates it up there. Even if the gameplay isn't for everyone, the story makes up for it easily. Now, if we're talking about third place, it's always a toss-up between Twilight Princess or Majora's Mask. The only reason why I don't consider Majora's Mask in my top 3, maybe, is because I recently played it again after a couple of years. And oh my God, it was so tedious. It was so tedious having to collect every single mask.
Yeah.
Just so you can get a good ending on it. Or I guess the
true ending.
The true ending in a way. It's a pain in the butt. But I would say Twilight Princess and then Majora's Mask under that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I love these kind of conversations because like I've always gravitated myself towards the darker Zelda games.
Yeah.
And so for me, Majora's is my favorite. I just love it. I don't know whether it was the time it hit me or whatever. Now, I did play the 3DS version when it came out. And I think they made a lot of quality of life improvements to the 3DS version that made it a lot better than if you go back and play the N64.
Yeah, I was playing the N64 version, but I think the only reason why I didn't play the 3DS version itself, just the tone felt different. It didn't feel as dark. It
Yes,
felt more
they did brighten it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
They did 100%. It was like they were like, well, we're on the 3DS. We can't be as gloomy and horrible as we were on the grainy grittiness.
240p and with darkness? Nope. Let's brighten it up.
But I love Majora's. It would probably be Twilight Princess after that again, just for the darkness. And then it would probably be like you. I have a toss up in third place, but it's a toss up between story versus gameplay, because it's like for story I would put Skyward Sword at number 3, but for gameplay I'd probably put Breath of the Wild, because and the funny thing is, when I say Majora's Mask is in number 1, I mean, you could literally interchange that with Ocarina, because they're effectively, barring the, yes, they're totally different in terms of play style, but they're built on the exact same engine.
Now look, this is what happens when you have a series with so many good games.
Yeah.
I brain farted so bad that I forgot about Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is my second, and then Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild, there's definitely a lot they could improve in that game, but it's so good.
Yeah.
Touching upon what you said, story-wise, definitely Skyward Sword. Breath of the Wild gameplay, best overall for me, it's Ocarina.
Oh yeah, as I say, I think that is the kind of, I think that is generally most sane, rational human beings' choice. I'm an outlier, I think, when I pick Majora's over it. I think most normal human beings will pick Ocarina.
No, but I get your reasoning why you would choose Majora's Mask. It definitely has some dark tones, but I feel like a lot of people miss them doing their first playthrough of it, because there's a lot of dark themes in that game that you have to search for yourself. Big tip.
I have a book. I must try. I think I have a digital copy of this. If I do, I'll send it on to you, because I think you'd enjoy it. It's like it's Majora's Mask, but it's a full, it goes into everything, and talking of the dark themes. Like, the funny thing is, the devs were just like, no, we didn't intend any of that. But then everybody else is like, no, it's about the 4 stages of grief, and it's about this. And I love that. Art should be something that you can put your own spin on. You feel, you get what you get from it, you know?
Yeah, like pretty much today. And again, shout out Sweetheart Allie, but she was in Romani Ranch today, and I was guiding her to a missable Easter egg where once you save the ranch, on the 3rd day, if you come back and you witness the conversation she's having with her own sister, it's like, hey, you know that milk you're not allowed to drink? Well, I'm gonna finally let you drink it because I consider you an adult now. But when you realize it's the 3rd day, and it's like, oh dang,
it's because the world is ending.
It's so dark.
Legit, I wanted to do this whole video essay at some point about Majora's Mask in comparison to COVID, because it almost feels like the same thing. It's just the gloom of it, man, the gloom of the world, and everybody's just Go ahead,
I would check that out.
This is everybody in Majora's Mask. The weirdest thing about it is when you go back and play it. I know we're getting a little off topic, but we're not. It's Zelda. We can talk whatever we want about Zelda. That's the great thing. But the thing about Majora is everybody's just going on with their daily life. The first 2 days, everyone's just oh yeah, so that moon's getting closer. Nobody kind of goes, guys, this is a real problem.
Until the 3rd day is oh, we gotta evacuate.
Oh, guys, well, I guess that's it. We probably could have done something, but oh well, we're in this situation now. Next, I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about you and the fact, as I say, you're a content creator, you're a streamer. I love popping in your streams when I get the chance and laughing a lot.
I appreciate it, Paddy.
So, I'd love to ask you quickly, just because, how did you start streaming? What was your journey into Twitch, I guess?
Yeah, the reason why I started streaming was literally the pandemic itself. I was stuck at home. I had just quit my job because my job itself, they weren't giving me any protective gear to continue working. So I told myself I wasn't going to risk myself to exposure. But yeah, after a certain month or so, I wanted genuine connection with and interaction with other people. And with the pandemic, you can't do that. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, I love video games, but I also like making connections with other people. And my conclusion was start streaming.
Yeah.
And I started in July 4th, I believe. It was July 4th. And ever since then, I've made, incredible friends. I've made friends with Mega Boss, Sour Patch Gramps, you, Paddy, Sweetheart Alley. And it's been a very blessing experience for sure.
It's weird. I think we've had a very similar journey. I started just before you, like late June. I started streaming on Twitch for the exact same reasons. It was like, I was used to going out every weekend and shooting films with my friends. Like that was what we did every Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it was like, when you get told like you can't do that anymore, it's like, well, then I have no interactions with anybody because that was my only human interaction before all this. So yeah, like you, friend of mine, Samantha Elliott Brody, who's one of my mods on my channel, she pushed me. She was like, do it, try it, do it, and I'm very glad I did because like you just said, I got to meet all the same people you listed. I don't even need to relist them. I'll add Miss Casey Diaz in there as well because, that whole group, everyone, Caitlin, every person I've met has just been a wonderful, amazing person,
Yeah, the community has been very welcoming and it has definitely been a blessing.
Absolutely. So guys, I will put links in the description to check out Moi's Twitter or Twitch. And you're on Twitter.
Yep, I'm on Twitter.
So Twitch and Twitter. And do you have a YouTube, Moi?
Yeah, I have a YouTube. I've been working on a video for like the longest time ever that I've been promising everybody that I'm gonna get done. But be on the lookout. It'll eventually come.
Well, that's a good thing though, because I find when I started my YouTube channel, I was constantly, in my opinion, rushing out content. And as time has gone on, I've become a lot more, like for me, I've become a lot more focused on like a video will take as long as it takes and I'll get it right before I release it. And I think that's a good mentality. So
yeah. So what I did for like my first playthrough of Final Fantasy X, I got all my VODs and condensed it into like a 40-something minute video. Oh. And you can see my whole reaction to the playthrough. So now what I'm doing and the video that I've been working on is my first playthrough to Final Fantasy VII, the OG. Ooh. Yes, Paddy.
One of my favorite games of all time. Well, effectively my favorite game of all time. Yeah.
Yes. So I've been condensing all my VODs into pretty much the same amount and just trying to get it up on YouTube. But I'm taking this nice and slow, but yeah, it'll eventually come.
Looking forward to it. So again, I'll drop links to your YouTube here as well. I'll drop links to everything. Anywhere you can find Moi, I will stick it down below. And Moi, from the bottom of my little green Irish heart, I want to say a massive thank you for not only coming on the show here and talking to me, but for like the absolute, the absolute friendship and welcome that you gave me coming into this community. There was never any gatekeeping, it was very much like welcomed with open arms. So I want to thank you so much for that.
No, of course. And that's literally what Twitch is all about. It's all about bringing in everyone into the community and just knowing everyone has a place here. So thank you, Paddy, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, guys. And I'm also going to ask you here at this point, right, that if you've enjoyed this video, if you've enjoyed any of the other videos that we've done in here, please do that usual thing of liking and subscribing. Really appreciate it. It's nice to, as much as it is on Twitch, it's like really nice to see the community growing here on YouTube as well. And yeah, guys, check Moi out. Links in the description. We're going to finish it off there, and I'm going to say what I say at the end of every episode, and it's really gotten me through the pandemic, and part of it is up here behind me, and that is, let's survive together and peace out. Thanks so much again, Moi.
Thank you.